And I'm here at Pipeline Cafe, Honolulu, and I'm getting to talk to a guy who was my guest on Hawaii Public Radio earlier this week, the great Steve Berlin of Los Lobos, who is embarking on a 4-island tour of the state. Aloha, Brother Steve.
Aloha.
Welcome back through the islands, and you got here, I believe, earlier today, yeah?
About 2 hours ago.
What made you're in Portland, Oregon?
Yes.
Why'd you choose that to settle down?
Well, it's a pretty unique city. You know, it's friendly. It's relatively affordable. Incredible music scene, incredible art scene, great food. I don't mind the climate very much. Although when I got off the plane today, I was just like, oh, this is a lot more. This is a lot easier to deal with than a month and a half straight of rain. But no, I like everything about the city. It's a really unique and very cool city.
You were born in the same place as my dad and my mom and my brother, which is the city of brotherly love.
Wow, no kidding.
And how much time did you spend as a youth in Philly?
Till I was, when I left when I was 18.
So I guess it would be fair to ask you, are you more of a Pats or a Jim's guy?
Oh, Pats, man. Can I tell you a quick Pat story?
You have to.
All right. I have so many Pat stories. Which one? I don't know which one to start with. Well, you know, you've been there.
Many times.
The ceiling above the window is all like, it's like the Philadelphia Hall of Fame. Our picture's up there. I mean, our picture is right there next to like Frankie Rydell and Jerry Blavat. It's kind of a high honor for me to be on the wall of fame there.
Of course it is. How long has it been there?
Many years. All right, another quick story. This is not all about Pats, I know. The first time we went to Philadelphia, we played in New York the night before. We didn't want to stay in New York because it was too expensive. So it was like 4 a.m, and I'm driving with we had a station wagon or a van or whatever. So it's 4 a.m. I'm driving through downtown Philly. I just say to the back of the van, which is everybody, like, hey man, I'm gonna stop at this place called Pat Steaks. If anybody's hungry, like whatever. So we got out, we ate. Okay, this was 4 o'clock in the morning. We were in Philly for 36 hours. We ate there 9 times. We went back for real 9 times in 36 hours. That's how much we like Pats.
Dude, it can happen. I remember one time just being in that place, Jim's, and literally going back to the counter twice. So.
Jim's is cool, but I'm a Pats guy all the way. And this really freaked me out. The other night I was watching the NFL Network, and they were doing this whole thing about, you got to go to Philadelphia. And they went to Geno's, which is like, that guy's a racist. Everybody knows that guy is like, he's like, that's like little Arizona there.
I didn't know that. What about Lee's from Lee's Hoagie House?
Lee's is awesome. It is awesome. But Geno's like, and it's like the NFL, like, what the hell are you guys doing at Geno's?
I didn't know that.
Jerk.
I didn't know he had the bad.
He's got a big sign, like English only, order in English.
We're not going to Geno's. We're headed. We have a trip coming up. We'll make sure we'll do an honorary Pats visit.
Go to Pat's, get the pizza provolone extra.
Dude, he likes pizza steaks too. I knew I had my brother. That's my thing whenever I'm back there.
Steaks, baby. Extra mushrooms, extra peppers. And hot sauce too. Oh.
So you have.
Wait, I'm having a moment. Okay, I'm good now.
Before the show, I ought to be careful. I don't want to give him heartburn before he has to go on. So obviously you did get to spend some time there. Flashing forward, you were a whole different coast. You're on the West Coast. It's the early 80s. But what I have is Sunset Strip 82 with the Blasters. But what's your earliest memory? Try to paint the picture for me of hooking up with the Los Lobos Cats.
Well, the amazing thing about wasn't just my meeting with them, but in that moment, okay, so it's 1982, and the band had been together for, at that point, 7 or 8 years, and, LA is a huge city, but there's a river, and mostly people don't cross the river, there's east and west, and so it's 1982, and the LA scene is in full flower. X, Plugs, Blasters, Go-Go's, everybody is just riding high. And Lobos opens for the Blasters, and it was just like, all these, including myself, everybody's, hipster, and we're all so well informed. We know everything that's going on, every little band and every offshoot band. And here come these 4 guys out of nowhere that just kind of obliterate everybody. It's like, where the hell are these guys? And they've been together for longer than anybody in the scene. But they were, they might as well be just like, East and West Berlin. They might as well have been behind a wall. No one knew about them. And literally overnight, they went from being complete obscurities that only the people in East LA knew about, who whose wedding the band had played in, to literally everybody was talking about. I remember the next day it was just like it was like one of those like B movies where, like, have you heard of Lobos? Every phone call, every conversation was Lobos. And it was like quite literally an overnight success. Like
it was a big night for them too.
By the next day, all anybody was talking about was Los Lobos. It was unbelievable in the scene, like all my hipster musician buddies. So that was cool. But we just became friends first. And the funny thing was that was Friday and Saturday, and then Sunday night, Ornette Coleman played at this little place in Westwood Playhouse, and I was there, and I look over, and all Los Lobos guys are there. I was like, these guys are pretty cool. I didn't expect to see anybody, Ornette Coleman, 1982, it's still kind of a, jazz snob only deal, so they were all there, so that's how I kind of knew we were going to be all right, we're going to be friends.
So it was a real bonding over that, and plus, like you said, you were at a gig literally that was formative for them, right? Because they were sort of exposing themselves to new folks in LA and catching fire. How did you guys, just a few years after that, get the honor, the privilege, I don't know, maybe it's neither of those things, of working with Paul Simon?
You want to take it down there, huh? Well, it was a favor to a record company. It's hard to recall, but in that moment, like when we worked with him, he was not like everyone's recollection of Paul Simon was never really having a career lull. He went from Simon & Garfunkel to being Paul Simon at Graceland. But at that time, he was really low on the food chain. We had just gotten like Album of the Year, our first Grammy. We were riding high, and Paul was coming off like 2 or 3 consecutive flops when he did Graceland, and our record label at the time asked us to go work with him. And I still kind of a fan. I was a fan. The guys, really couldn't care less about him. But, because at the time, early 80s, Warner Brothers had a very family vibe. And whatever Lenny Waronker, the president of the company, wanted, we were happy to do. So this is another really long story. But, we went in the studio with him, and the guy was just embarrassing. He was clueless. He had no idea what he wanted. At that point, Graceland it was like him bouncing around the world, being a complete and total dilettante, not really understanding or knowing anything about the music that he was working with. And I'd say this, there's backup for this. And he was just more or less brutally stealing songs. Like someone would play him a song, and he would take it and write lyrics over it. So we spent 2 days in the studio with him, and there's like a whole thing online. You could look it all up. I go into greater detail, but it was horrible. But after 3 hours, I was on the phone to Lenny and said, "You got to get us out of here. This guy is a knucklehead. He doesn't know what he wants. He can't describe anything. He has no clue. He's a jerk. He doesn't communicate at all. And we're just wasting our time. We're not going to get anything out of this." And
you're alone in the studio with him?
Well, us and him and his lunatic engineer. As a guy who I had the highest respect for, Roy Haley, who had made some great records, but they were just really, really, really difficult to work with. It was just a really tough situation for us. And he was like, "Well, let's just jam. And we're like, "We don't really do that." We're at that point, we didn't, Louis was our drummer, and he's not really a jamming drummer. He's really a guitar player, as you'll see tonight. He only plays drums on a couple songs. And so he's super uncomfortable in those situations. We're like, "Paul, we don't really do that. Don't you, you Paul Simon, you've got, 19 million records, you don't have anything?" He's like, "No, I just thought we'd get together and see what happened." And, and just, it was really bad. So we ended up, at the end of the second day, we were just so bored, we started playing one of our songs. And he goes, "What's that?" And we go, "It's one of a new song of ours." He goes, "Can we use that?" And we're like, "Oh, I guess so." And so we just played it, and, like our misery was over. But, when the record came out, he claimed 100% credit for it, which to this day galls us to no end.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, so.
But it's a great story, Steve.
It's a pretty good story. I'd like the story better if he came to his senses, and, we got nothing. He didn't pay us a penny for it. 13 million records sold, he didn't pay us a penny. And he didn't, originally, most of the African artists weren't credited either, but there were actually, those records had been released, so he had to actually go back and put their names on the album as co-writers, because those songs, the trail was, we had no way of proving that the song, was stolen, except me saying it. But those guys, they were like, "Hey, wait a minute, that guy wrote that song." So he had to go back and retroactively give those guys credit, but you could tell what kind of jerk he is, because he didn't give anybody else credit. And
these are the African musicians he was taking stuff from.
Yeah, I think they were, our viewpoint was, they were happy to be
to get the exposure.
At that time, it was still apartheid, so there wasn't really, like just getting out of South Africa. They think for
the trade-off.
They were ecstatic, but we obviously had a very different viewpoint, and we tried to find him for a couple of months, and then this is the quote. We said, finally, we were bitching about it nonstop, and he goes, "Hey, you guys don't like it? Sue me. See what happens." That's what he said.
Some juicy stuff tonight, man. All right, I'll wrap it up with you. That's good stuff, Steve. You're laying it down. I didn't know I was going to come here and have filet mignon.
I tell you, buddy. He's a fine songwriter. He's written some amazing stuff, but ask anybody that's worked with him. That guy is despised. He's an impossible human being.
Rock and roll, man. It's gotta. If you don't cover some of the juiciness, then you're really not doing it right. I appreciate it myself. Flashing forward, one final question here for you, and something really cool that is coming your way. Now, you and I were joking about this on the phone the other day. You were all set to be going to Negril with our friends from Little Feat, and instead you got
the embarrassing questions tonight. Aren't you?
Good. This is not embarrassing at all. Hey, I just was hanging with Paul. He wasn't embarrassed. He thought it was really cool. He was rooting you on.
Paul Barrere?
Yeah.
Oh man, I feel really bad about it.
Okay.
We got offered, we had agreed to do the Little Feat tour, which I was really looking forward to. I'm a lifelong Little Feat fan. I've got bootlegs and, I've got all kinds of Little Feat stuff. So I was really looking forward to hanging out with those guys. And then after we had already agreed to do their tour, their cruise, we got offered a opening for Clapton for 2.5 weeks. And it was just like, what are we going to do? And it's like the Clapton thing was close to home, and it was, so we just had to literally flip the coin. And I'm really embarrassed because I know how much the Little Feat guys, and I really hope we can make it up to them. We'll go and swab the deck on their next cruise, or
Did you really flip a coin?
No, we it was kind of like, oh man, we have to do this because it was just the opportunity was. It was too much to pass up. Clapton personally asked us. It wasn't like agent to agent. It was just like, hey, because I guess the guys had done Crossroads, so it was,
So when you say personally, how does that define personally?
As I understand it, it was not a typical agent to agent entreaty. This came directly from Eric to us. Like, would you guys do this? Would you open my tour for me?
So did he call somebody?
I don't think I don't know if he called directly, but I know that it was sort of like the way that it all came down. It wasn't your normal thing. It was more personal than that. So
I know you love Derek Trucks a lot. When I was first interviewing him, asking him, how did you first hook up with Clapton? He was like, dude, my cell phone rang. I answered it. It was Eric. How crazy is that?
Pretty cool. Well, Derek's the best in the world. So
isn't that nuts, though?
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Just imagine that. You're down to earth enough to appreciate that.
I would. That would be an interesting phone call. I would take that call.
Yeah, it makes for great interview content, as you can imagine.
And Derek's so humble. I can imagine him just sort of like, oh, it was Clapton.
Yeah, and then he was on his way home. I'm paraphrasing, and he had to call his Susan, and he's like, honey, I got a really good excuse why I can't go home. So anyway, Steve's got to go and do the show, but you've been a real champ and a gentleman to spend some time with me. I hope this wasn't too much of a drag.
No, my pleasure. Go Eagles.
You're the man.